The Cowboys trade Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers for count them, two first-round picks and the defensive lineman in Kenny Clark. Micah will now sign a 4-year, $188 million contract with $136 million guaranteed, making his average annual value 47 buckaroos, $1,000,000 a year, the highest for a non-quarterback in NFL history. JV, I usually don't ask this question because like players are going to get, paid what they get paid. And obviously a team like the Packers will reset the market to go get a generational player like Micah Parsons. But was Micah Parsons worth Patrick Mahomes franchise quarterback money?
Yeah, I don't know. You can ask this question, but obviously it depends how he plays for the next 4 years. And I kind of talked about this earlier this week on the podcast. I was looking at the list of non-quarterback contracts that are the highest of the top 10, and you're starting to see a trend in players that get into that fourth or fifth year that are super pricey and teams pay for, obviously, like your Jamar Chases, your Myles Garretts, your TJ Watts, your Micah Parsons. Now, there's not a lot of Super Bowl success aligned with that, at least. And,
Right.
I don't know if that's a trend or not, but I'm finding that teams that are investing in these non-quarterbacks, $50 million a year, it's a pretty hefty price, I would say. And you need to draft really, really well. That's the one thing. And you can win with them, but you got to draft really well. And some teams, like, they're not Philly, right? They're not the Niners where you can draft and sustain a competitive roster with your draft pick. So was 47 million too much? Maybe. He's got to be a first team all pro for 4 straight seasons, pretty much. Like, I honestly think if he's a second team all pro, like, that's almost a loss. You can't be paying him 47 million to not be at the top of his game. And then health comes in too, right? He's been a pretty healthy player. I know last year he missed a few games, but the majority of his career in the NFL, he's been healthy. He's got to stay healthy and he's got to play at an elite level. So was he worth the money? If the production stays the same and he's a game changer on the defense, probably. But you're really not leaving a lot of room. Like, there's no wiggle room. He's got to produce at a high level for 4 straight years.
Yeah, 100%. Because I would even argue if he comes in and gives the same production, but now has a $47 million a year price tag, that kind of feels like a drop down in terms of just how you weigh both of the parts of the deal, right? Because if Micah's contract is now here and he's still an elite player, we know, but no, I'm right there with you. He's got to come out and play the best 4 years of his NFL career. And obviously whatever happens after that will be it. But when you're talking about this contract making more than Patrick Mahomes, making more than Matthew Stafford, making more than Kyler Murray, coming up on the back ends of contracts like Jalen Hurts and Tua, I mean, we are just in unprecedented territory here. We've seen the defensive end market be reset 4 times this year now. TJ Watt, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, who originally did it, and now we have Micah Parsons with $47 million a year. And I got to admit, man, I was genuinely shocked. Like, I thought Jerry was going to pull out the Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb moment, pay them at the 13th hour of the day, like, wait until the night before the season opener. And, because we see, like, we see kind of the way that it's playing out, and it's like, okay, it feels like kind of antics, maybe semantics, like a lot of politics. And then Jerry comes out, makes a great statement, don't lose a lot of sleep over this. Like, we want Micah to be a Cowboy. Micah wants to be a Cowboy. Then he comes out saying that he will sever the relationship, like get legal action involved. We've never heard that from an NFL player before. I'm like, okay, but it is 2025. Like, generational player, generational heights, right? Desperate times calls for desperate measures. There's only one other player in the history of the league to account for as many sacks year over year as Micah Parsons has, and that is Lawrence Taylor. Or rather, Micah Parsons was the only one to do it besides Lawrence Taylor. And you just see this escalating. Jerry Jones gets pissed because Micah doesn't want to negotiate with him behind closed doors. Apparently a $200 million guaranteed contract that Jerry was trying to hand to him. And then when Micah says, get my agent involved, then this is what really pissed me off about Jerry, which I kind of think was the straw that broke the camel's back. When he was on the interview with Stephen A. and basically talking about how he felt like Micah was running to mommy and daddy asking the same question, like, did you really just degrade the face of your franchise like that? No wonder brother got sent out the door. Now, here's the real question, right? Who do you think actually won this trade?
Well, first of all, I want to touch on the contract that supposedly was set out to Micah from Jerry. And it's like, that's a 5-year contract. And from what I've read, at least the reports I read earlier today, was that agents usually tend to float away from that contract just because it locks you down for another year and it potentially hinders you from getting another big time contract. Because, like, that's a big difference, right? 4 and 5 years in the NFL. That's a season ending injury away from a big contract or a mediocre contract. Again, they're making millions of dollars. Mediocre contract, you understand, right? It's all in context. But again, that's why these players want their agents involved, and it makes sense. Why would you not want to converse with an agent as an NFL GM or an owner? It doesn't make sense. But as far as winners of the trade go, I mean, you got to go Green Bay. Look, Kenny Clark and 2 first-round picks, that's solid value that the Cowboys are receiving, but that means that the Cowboys have to hit on both those first-round picks, which are going to be later in the draft, too. People aren't taking that into consideration. I don't think the Packers are going to be a bottom 16 team, bottom 12 team. It's not going to be like you're picking within the first 10 picks. You know what I mean? So you got to hit on 2 Pro Bowlers in the later rounds of the first round. And I just don't see that happening. Kenny Clark's going to be solid, but he's aging. I think he's in his 10th season, right? So those 2 first-round picks, I find it hard to believe that they will be the equivalent of what Micah Parsons would have been for this franchise. And that's why I say Micah to Green Bay was the winner of the trade. However, the Cowboys weren't handling that $47 million contract anyways.
Yep.
So I think they had to get rid of it. Like, you can't pay Dak 60, CD, whatever it is, 34, and then Micah 47. Your franchise is done for. So they had to make the deal, but they lost at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it was tough to see, the way that it played out with the deal, apparently rumored from Jerry, the offer was made in March, and they reports were saying that they wanted this to be like one of the most guaranteed contracts in NFL history for a non-quarterback. And once Micah didn't want to accept, which I guess because it was behind closed doors, but some people were like, he should have just shaken Jerry's hand, then brought his agent in and been like, hey, let's get this on paper. Jerry Jones told Micah, like, hey, you can either continue to play out your 5th-year option or you can be traded. So just kind of piggybacking off what you said there about, some of the contract. But in terms of who won the trade between Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers, I say both sides won. And here's exactly why. Just like you said, JV, Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, regardless of what they said about Micah Parsons, they did not want to handle a $47 million a year contract. I believe the offer of $40 million a year, $200 million, around the total of being guaranteed. I think that is a fair offer from a guy in Jerry Jones, compensating a guy like Micah Parsons, who's gotten shut down on the back end of other seasons and hasn't really showed up in playoff games. You get 2, count them, 2 first-round picks. And Kenny Clark. Let's scratch Kenny Clark off the table. But the fact that you get 2 first-rounders, and I agree with you, that the probability of going into the draft and getting a Micah Parsons-esque player, like, you can easily look at Green Bay and say, okay, you give up a generational haul for a generational talent. You knew Micah was going to cost a first. Here's just 1 more first-rounder because we really believe Micah is that guy. And it's like, with Green Bay, of course they win because they get Micah. And then with Dallas, you get 2 firsts and you avoid the contract. At least you move the player, right, in the middle of it and not just hold on to him like we've seen Terry B hold on to. Got a solid deal. Trey Hendrickson held on to, which I'll kind of compare to in a second, got a solid deal. He knew the player needed to be moved, and he got the compensation for it. Now, does the Nico Harrison and the Jerry Jones and the Family Guy memes fly all around? Absolutely. That's not going to serve them well in the eye of the media. But think about this for a moment, JV. Did we not just have the back-to-back leader in NFL sacks only need 1 first-round pick and a young defensive player, and he signed a onesie for $30 million a year with the Bengals? 4 years, JV. You're telling me 4 years of a player's career is worth 2 first-round picks? That's why I think both of them won. Because Trey Hendrickson, who's 30, Micah Parsons is 26. Trey Hendrickson has led the NFL in sacks in back-to-back years. He led the NFL in pressures. Micah is not in that conversation. I get it. You can skew the stats to put him in a conversation with Lawrence Taylor. But unless it was Trey Hendrickson leading the NFL in sacks since he has been in the orange and black for Cincinnati, if it's not him, it's only TJ Watt or it's only Myles Garrett. But he couldn't even get moved for 1 first and a young defensive player, which could have equated to a 2nd or a 3rd. You get what I'm saying here? Like, we just had this kind of debate with Trey Hendrickson, but Micah's getting moved, no problem. I would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say with Micah, you get a little bit more versatility and obviously the youth, right? So I think that's where the multiple first round picks come in for him.
Yeah.
I think the part that stings for me, or at least if you're a Cowboys fan, I would imagine would sting, is the fact that you could have had Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott, and CeeDee Lamb all together, the trio for your franchise
Yep.
for the future,
Yep.
had Jerry Jones, paid the guys at the right time, and made the right moves to make that happen. But the delay on Dak Prescott's contract to pay him $60 million and completely overpay him. I mean, that's not even in question anymore. CeeDee Lamb, that's a whole nother discussion. I believe he's one of the
CeeDee's
top
the only
receivers in the
contract
league,
that's worth it. Yep.
right? Like, yeah, like he deserves his money. He's a dog, arguably top 5 in the league, whatever. We can bypass that. But Dak, 60 million, it just doesn't make sense. And then you get in this situation with Micah, like Micah got paid 6 million more than TJ Watt, who was previously the leader at 41 million per year.
Thank you.
That's a lot. That's a
Thank
steep
you.
contract. And I
Yeah.
think the other thing we have to take into account too is, like I said this as well, Micah was supposed to be a Cowboy for life. Like he got drafted there and he was diehard Cowboy for life. He wanted
Grew up
to be
in
there,
Philly being a Cowboys fan.
right?
That's
Like
bold right there.
you don't get that often at
Nah.
all.
Nah.
When guys are walking out the tunnel and they are in tears for the franchise that drafted them because they cheered for them growing up.
Yep.
So I'd imagine if they just handled the relationship properly, Micah would have remained a Cowboy for life,
Agreed.
regardless if it was a few million less than what Green Bay offered.
Yep.
But the problem was is that Jerry hurt that relationship so badly
Oh yeah.
that he was done, you know?
Yep.
And like sometimes NFL players will just buy into the money, but I think Micah got to the point in no return where he was like, screw this franchise.
Yep.
Screw Jerry. I'm moving on. And honestly, I don't blame him. Like, if you're going to get treated like that, and it's not so like he's going to get millions of dollars, that's fine. But why is he getting treated differently than every other star defensive player? Like, everyone got taken care of except Micah. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it definitely has the credibility of the Cowboys wanting to hold on to star players and Jerry Jones just kind of going down the toilet bowl because, again, last-minute deal with Dak, last-minute deal with CeeDee Lamb, consistent, back and forth with Micah Parsons. So it's very tough. I knew this was bad when he mentioned he would be willing to sever his relationship with the Dallas Cowboys. And then the video that you posted, Buddy was eating nachos, telling the fans to call him, and then he was on whatever type of bench on the sidelines like, I would literally rather be anywhere else than here. When you look back on it, I'm really shocked he even showed up. It was probably like so he didn't take unnecessary fines, but yeah, just to see the real deterioration between a superstar and an owner of a billboard franchise like worldwide, just really, really insane to see. We'd love to hear from y'all down in the comments, though. What are your thoughts on the Micah Parsons trade? Who was the winner? Was it an overpay? Because clearly we know that the Packers needed them. Over the last 3 years, they've been 14th roughly in sacks with 142 total. They've been 12th in quarterback hits with about 374 and 16th in pressures. Bottom third in the NFL, also in pass rush win rate. So these guys just clearly needed a defensive superstar to come in, and Micah Parsons is clearly going to fill that role.
Hey, it's AJL here. Appreciate you sticking to the end of the video here on YouTube. You could have chose any other show, but you chose my video, and for that, I'm very grateful. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media. Hit the bell on the channel so you never miss a post. Check me out on all social media platforms. Right here, you'll find a chance to subscribe to the show, a related video, and a playlist. See you guys in the next one.